The Arcturus system blazed like a jewel against the velvet darkness of space. The UEA's Horizon, a seemingly modest research vessel, drifted through the outer reaches of the system, its hull bearing the weathered marks of long-term deep space exploration. To any observer, it appeared to be just another primitive human ship, barely capable of interstellar travel. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's main viewport, her dark eyes reflecting the distant starlight. The ship's passive sensors had detected something unusual in the system, energy signatures that didn't match any known natural phenomena. After 3 months of careful observation, they were finally close enough to get detailed readings. "Status report," Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Dr. Marcus Rivera, the ship's chief scientist, looked up from his holographic display. "The energy signature is definitely artificial, Commander, but it's strange. The pattern suggests technology far beyond anything humanity is supposed to possess." Chen allowed herself a small smile. That was the key phrase, supposed to possess. For decades, humanity had maintained the greatest deception in its history, presenting itself to the galaxy as a young, struggling species, while secretly developing technologies that would reshape the understanding of physics itself. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each member aware of their role in this elaborate charade. The Horizon's crude exterior, hidden quantum sensors continued their scan, gathering data that would be impossible for their supposed level of technology. "New contact," Lieutenant Patel's voice cut through the quiet. "Massive energy spike at bearing 340. Space itself seemed to ripple as a massive vessel emerged from what appeared to be a fold in reality. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly iridescence, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. It was beautiful, alien, and unmistakably a warship of the Haelor Empire. "Multiple additional contacts," Patel reported, her fingers dancing across her console. 5. No, 7 Haelor vessels emerging. "They're surrounding us." Chen's expression remained neutral. This was the moment they had prepared for, the culmination of humanity's long game of technological hide-and-seek. "All hands, maintain current protocols. Remember your training." The main communication screen flared to life, revealing a Haelor commander. The aliens' crystalline features arranged themselves in what passed for contempt among their species. Their translation matrix converted the harmonic speech into English. "Primitive vessel, you have entered restricted space. Your species is not yet deemed worthy of interstellar travel. Submit to immediate termination." Chen raised an eyebrow, her response calculated to reinforce the Haelor's assumptions. "This is a peaceful research vessel. We mean no harm and will withdraw immediately." The Haelor commander's crystalline features sparkled with amusement. "Your species requires containment. Your destruction will serve as a warning to others who would venture beyond their assigned boundaries." Energy readings spiked as the Haelor vessels charged their weapons. Chen waited until the last possible moment, then tapped a sequence on her neural interface. "Initiative Phantom. Execute." The Horizon's exterior suddenly shimmered, the crude hull plating dissolving to reveal sleek, dark metal underneath. Quantum fields that had been dormant for months activated, creating ripples in reality itself. "What is this?" The Haelor commander's confidence wavered for the first time. "Impossible. Your species cannot possess such technology." "That's the thing about humans," Chen replied, allowing herself a genuine smile now. "We're very good at keeping secrets." The Horizon's quantum drive engaged, shifting the ship partially out of normal spacetime. To the Haelor sensors, it would appear to be in multiple places simultaneously. Their targeting systems, designed to engage conventional vessels, would find it impossible to lock onto a ship that existed in quantum superposition. "All stations, battle configuration," Chen ordered. "Show them exactly why underestimating humanity was their first mistake." The ship's hidden weapon systems deployed, revealing arrays of quantum torpedoes, weapons that could phase through conventional shields, as if they didn't exist. The Haelor vessels, for all their apparent advancement, had never encountered anything like them. "Your species," the Haelor commander's voice carried a note of fear now. "What are you?" "We're humanity," Chen replied, her finger hovering over the weapon's release. "And you're about to learn why attacking us was your biggest mistake." The quantum torpedoes launched, their passage through space-time leaving trails of distorted reality in their wake. The Haelor ship's supposedly impenetrable shields might as well have been missed for all the protection they offered against weapons that operated on principles they had never imagined possible. As the first torpedo struck home, phasing through multiple layers of Haelor defenses before detonating, Chen sent a quantum-encrypted signal to Earth Command. The message was simple: First contact protocols breached. Operation Revelation is now in effect. Across human space, hidden fleets began to emerge from their quantum shadows. The Haelor Empire was about to discover that they hadn't been containing a primitive species. They had been poking the sleeping giant that had spent decades preparing for this very moment. Supreme Admiral Vextrol stood in the command center of the Haelor Empire's flagship, the Crystal Dominion, his crystalline form pulsing with barely contained rage as he watched the tactical displays. What should have been a routine containment operation had turned into a nightmare. The human vessel they'd confronted hadn't been destroyed. Instead, it had revealed capabilities that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. "Show me the sensor logs again," he demanded, his harmonic voice causing ripples in the liquid crystal displays surrounding him. The recordings played once more, the seemingly primitive human ship transforming, its quantum signatures multiplying until their sensors couldn't track it, then the devastating attack that had crippled 3 Haelor vessels before they could even respond. "High Command must be informed," his second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Zareth, suggested. "This level of deception from a containment species is unprecedented." Before Vextrol could respond, the sensor arrays erupted with warnings. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold across their detection grid, revealing hundreds of human vessels emerging from what their instruments insisted was empty space. The ships appeared in perfect formation, their dark hulls absorbing light in ways that defied conventional physics. Aboard the UES Shadowblade, Fleet Admiral Helena Rodriguez watched her tactical display with satisfaction. Decades of preparation were finally paying off. The quantum fleet's emergence had been flawlessly executed, with ships appearing simultaneously across 20 light-years of space. "All task forces report ready," her tactical officer announced. "The Haelor fleet remains in disarray from the Horizon's initial engagement." Rodriguez nodded, her augmented neural interface allowing her to process battlefield data at superhuman speeds. "Begin Phase 2. Let's show them exactly what they've awakened." The human fleet moved with impossible precision, their quantum drives allowing them to exist partially out of normal spacetime. Traditional Haelor targeting systems found themselves trying to lock onto ships that seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, their advanced AI systems unable to determine which position was real. In the Crystal Dominion's command center, chaos erupted as reports flooded in from across the sector. Human ships were appearing everywhere, striking with weapons that ignored their strongest defenses. The Haelor Empire's supposedly invincible containment fleet found itself fighting an enemy that seemed to operate outside the very laws of physics they had based their technological superiority upon. "Impossible," Vextrol whispered, watching another Haelor cruiser disappear into quantum fragments. Their entire civilization appeared primitive. Their ships used ion drives. Their colonies were barely self-sufficient. How could they hide this level of advancement? The answer came in the form of a transmission that cut through their supposedly unbreakable encryption. Admiral Rodriguez's image appeared on their command screens, her expression calm but resolute. "The Haelor Empire made a fundamental mistake," she stated, her words translated perfectly into harmonic Haelor speech. "You assumed that technological development must follow a linear path, that a species must master conventional spaceflight before discovering quantum mechanics, that energy shields must precede dimensional phasing." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Humanity took a different path. While you watched our chemical rockets and laughed at our primitive attempts at colonization, we were exploring aspects of physics your empire never considered. We didn't build better conventional ships. We found ways to step outside conventional space itself. Vextral's crystalline form darkened with realization. Every primitive human ship they'd observed over the years, every struggling colony, every apparent technological limitation, it had all been an elaborate deception. They hadn't been containing a primitive species. They had been watching a masterful performance. The human fleet's formation shifted, their quantum drives creating patterns in space-time that the Haelor sensors couldn't interpret. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of finality as she delivered her ultimatum. You could have approached us as equals. You could have offered friendship, or at least peaceful coexistence. Instead, you chose to attack what you thought was a helpless research vessel. Now you'll learn why that decision will go down as the greatest mistake in your empire's history. The quantum fleet moved as one, their coordinated attack turning space itself into a weapon. Haelor ships found themselves fighting an enemy that could literally move through their defenses, strike from within their formations, and disappear before they could respond. Their mighty empire, built on millennia of technological superiority, faced an enemy that had developed along an entirely different technological path, one they had never even considered possible. As the battle unfolded, automated quantum beacons activated throughout human space, revealing vast networks of hidden shipyards, research stations, and defense platforms. Humanity's mask of primitive struggle fell away completely, revealing a civilization that had spent generations preparing for this moment, developing technologies that operated on principles the Haelor Empire had never even theorized. The age of deception was over. The time had come for humanity to show the galaxy its true face, and the Haelor Empire would be the first to learn just how costly their arrogance had been. The quantum wake of 1,000 human warships rippled across the Arcturus sector, their synchronized movements creating patterns in space-time that the Haelor Empire's sensors struggled to comprehend. Admiral Rodriguez's quantum fleet had split into 3 task forces, each targeting critical Haelor military installations that until now, the Empire hadn't even known humans knew existed. Captain David Chen of the UES Stormbreaker led the vanguard of Task Force Alpha, his ship's quantum drive allowing it to dance between dimensions. The Stormbreaker's dark hull absorbed both light and sensor scans, making it appear as nothing more than a shadow against the stars. Multiple Haelor defensive platforms detected, his tactical officer reported. They're attempting to establish a containment grid. Chen smiled grimly. They still think in terms of conventional space, quantum strike pattern delta. Let's show them why that's no longer enough. The Stormbreaker's quantum torpedoes launched, their warheads existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The Haelor defensive platforms, their shields designed to repel energy weapons and kinetic impacts, might as well have been trying to stop sunlight with a fishing net. In the Haelor Empire's primary military command center on Crystallis Prime, Supreme Strategic Commander Ixhal watched in growing horror as defense platform after defense platform winked out of existence. The humans weren't just destroying their installations, they were erasing them from reality itself. How are they penetrating our quantum shielding? One of his subordinates demanded. Our barriers are based on principles that took us millennia to perfect. Because, Ixhal realized with dawning comprehension, they didn't try to break through our shields. They found a way around them entirely. They're operating on a level of quantum mechanics we never even considered possible. The human fleet's attack patterns suddenly shifted, their ships moving in ways that defied conventional tactical doctrine. Instead of concentrating their forces on key strategic targets, they seemed to be deliberately creating interference patterns in spacetime itself. Aboard the UES Lightweaver, Dr. Maya Patel monitored the quantum field manipulations with intense concentration. As the fleet's lead quantum physicist, she had helped develop the theories that made their current strategy possible. Field coherence at 98%, she reported to Admiral Rodriguez over the quantum comm. The spatial lattice is forming exactly as predicted. Rodriguez nodded, her neural interface allowing her to visualize the complex quantum mechanics at play. Begin Phase 3. Let's show them what happens when you combine quantum physics with human creativity. The human fleet's seemingly random movements suddenly revealed their true purpose. The quantum wake of their ships had created a massive interference pattern in spacetime, turning the very fabric of reality into a weapon. Haelor ships found their own quantum shields working against them, their advanced technology trapping them in pockets of distorted spacetime. Impossible! Ixhal shouted as he watched entire battle groups become ensnared in the humans' quantum web. They've weaponized quantum entanglement on a strategic scale. The humans pressed their advantage, their ships moving through the quantum distortions as easily as fish through water. They had spent decades developing technology specifically designed to operate in these conditions, while the Haelor Empire's mighty warships found themselves fighting both the enemy and physics itself. Captain Chen led his task force through a particularly dense cluster of quantum distortions, targeting the Haelor's primary command and control nodes. Multiple targets locked, his weapons officer announced. Quantum resonance torpedoes ready. Fire at will, Chen ordered. Let them see what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity. The quantum torpedoes launched, their warheads creating cascading failures in the Haelor's quantum shield networks. Ships that had relied on their supposedly impenetrable defenses suddenly found themselves vulnerable to attacks from weapons that operated on principles they couldn't even detect, let alone defend against. Dr. Patel's voice came over the quantum comm, excitement evident despite her professional tone. Admiral, the quantum field distortions are exceeding our projections. The Haelor's attempts to counter our attacks are actually amplifying the effect. Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. They're trying to fight quantum mechanics with brute force. That never ends well. The battle continued to unfold across multiple dimensions of spacetime, with human ships striking from angles that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. The Haelor Empire's mighty fleet, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior technology, found themselves facing an opponent that had turned their own understanding of physics into a liability. In the chaos of battle, Supreme Commander Ixhal finally understood the full magnitude of their mistake. The Haelor Empire had spent millennia perfecting their technology, following a linear path of development that seemed obvious and inevitable. But humanity, forced to think creatively by their limited resources and the Empire's containment efforts, had discovered entirely new principles of physics, principles that made most of the Empire's defensive technology not just obsolete, but actively dangerous to use. As another command node disappeared into quantum fragments, Ixhal realized that this wasn't just a battle, it was a fundamental shift in the balance of power in the galaxy. The Haelor Empire had prided itself on being the most technologically advanced civilization in known space. Now they faced the terrifying possibility that they had been surpassed not through superior resources or time, but through humanity's unique ability to think beyond established limits. The counterstrike continued, with human ships systematically dismantling the Empire's defensive infrastructure. Each engagement revealed new aspects of humanity's quantum technology, demonstrating capabilities that the Haelor had considered theoretically impossible. Their mighty empire, built on the assumption of technological superiority, was being systematically taken apart by a species they had dismissed as primitive barely hours ago. The crystalline spires of the Haelor High Command rose like frozen lightning on Crystallis Prime, their usually pristine surfaces now clouded with anxiety. Inside the central chamber, the Empire's highest military leaders gathered in an emergency session, their forms casting fractured shadows across the quantum crystal displays, showing their devastating losses. High Admiral Kvex, his crystalline form darkened with stress, addressed the assembly. Our containment fleets have lost contact with 37% of our forward bases. The humans aren't just defeating our forces, they're unmaking our defensive networks faster than we can adapt. A ripple of harmonic discord swept through the chamber. The Haelor Empire had faced challenges before, but never anything like this. Their technological superiority had been the foundation of their power for millennia. Now that foundation was crumbling. "We must deploy the world breakers," declared General Zarkov, his voice carrying the sharp edges of desperation. "These humans may have mastered quantum mechanics, but even they cannot survive the destruction of their solar system's gravitational stability." The world breakers, massive ships capable of disrupting the gravitational fields of entire star systems, represented the Empire's ultimate weapons. They had never been used in actual combat, their mere existence usually sufficient to ensure compliance from any potential threats. Supreme Commander Ixhal's response cut through the chamber like a blade. The world breakers would be worse than useless. The humans' quantum technology allows them to operate partially outside normal spacetime. Disrupting gravitational fields would only give them more dimensional anomalies to exploit. Aboard the UES Starweaver, Dr. Maya Patel's quantum sensors detected the massive power signatures of the Haelor's superweapons activating. "Admiral Rodriguez," she reported, "they're powering up something big. The energy readings are off the charts." Rodriguez received the data through her neural interface, her augmented mind quickly analyzing the tactical implications. "They're getting desperate," she observed. "General Chen, is the quantum web ready?" "Ready and waiting." Chen's voice came through the quantum comm. "Though I still can't believe they're actually going to try this." The massive Haelor world breakers emerged from their dimensional pockets, their crystalline hulls glowing with power as they prepared to tear apart the very fabric of space. The Empire's commanders watched with grim satisfaction, certain that no civilization, no matter how advanced, could survive what was coming. That satisfaction turned to horror as their sensors detected a massive quantum field forming around their prized superweapons. The humans hadn't just been fighting, they'd been positioning their ships precisely, creating an enormous quantum interference pattern that now encompassed the entire battlefield. "What are they doing?" Kvex demanded, watching as the quantum field began to resonate with their ship's own power signatures. The answer came in the form of a transmission from Admiral Rodriguez. "You know, we detected your world breakers decades ago. Did you really think we spent all this time developing quantum technology without figuring out how to counter your biggest weapons?" The quantum field pulsed, and the world breakers found their own gravitational weapons feeding back into the humans' quantum interference pattern. The very power they had intended to use to destroy their enemies was being redirected, transformed, and used against them. "Fascinating, isn't it?" Dr. Patel's voice joined the transmission, her scientific curiosity evident even in this tense moment. "Your weapons operate by distorting spacetime through gravitational manipulation. But when you're dealing with an enemy that can control quantum states, all you're really doing is giving us more energy to work with." The world breakers' power systems began to overload, their attempt to brute force their way through the quantum field only making things worse. The Empire's ultimate weapons had become a liability, their fundamental operating principles turned against them by an enemy that understood physics on a deeper level. In the high command chamber, the military leadership watched in stunned silence as their superweapons were systematically neutralized. Not destroyed, that would have been less humiliating, but rendered harmless, their vast power absorbed and redirected by human quantum technology. "How?" Kvex whispered. "How did they advance so far without us knowing?" "Because you never looked in the right direction," Rodriguez replied, her voice almost sympathetic. "You were so convinced that technological advancement had to follow your path that you never considered alternatives. While you were perfecting bigger engines and stronger shields, we were learning to step outside the boundaries of conventional physics entirely." The remnants of the Haelor fleet attempted to regroup, their commanders falling back on tactics and strategies that had served them well for thousands of years. But against an enemy that could literally choose which laws of physics they wanted to obey at any given moment, conventional military doctrine was worse than useless. Human ships danced through the quantum foam of spacetime, their movements coordinated with a precision that made the Empire's best formations look clumsy by comparison. Each Haelor counterattack was met not with direct opposition, but with subtle manipulations of quantum fields that turned their own power against them. In the high command chamber, Ixhal made a decision that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. "Send the signal," he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of history. The Empire sues for peace." The request for negotiations was transmitted across all frequencies, quantum and conventional. The human fleet's advance halted, their ships holding position in a complex geometric pattern that continued to generate the quantum interference field. Rodriguez's response was immediate and clear. "We accept your surrender. But understand this, the galaxy is entering a new age. The time of the Haelor Empire's unchallenged dominance is over. Humanity is ready to take its place among the stars, and we will not be contained." The Hall of Crystalline Truth on Crystallis Prime had stood for 10,000 years as a symbol of the Haelor Empire's supremacy. Now its vast chamber hosted an event none of its builders could have imagined. Peace negotiations with a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive barely a week ago. Admiral Helena Rodriguez stood before the assembled Haelor leadership, her quantum dress uniform absorbing and refracting light in ways that made the crystalline beings uncomfortable. The fabric itself was a statement, a demonstration that humanity could manipulate quantum effects on even the smallest scale. Supreme Commander Ixhal addressed the assembly, his voice carrying the harmonic overtones of formal Haelor speech. "The Empire acknowledges that we have grievously misunderstood humanity's capabilities. Our assumption of technological superiority has cost us dearly." "Your mistake," Rodriguez replied, "wasn't in underestimating our technology. It was in assuming that there was only one path to advancement, that your way was the only way." Dr. Maya Patel stood at a nearby quantum display, presenting data that showed just how differently humanity had developed. "While you focused on mastering conventional physics," she explained, "we were forced to look for alternatives. Your containment efforts actually pushed us to explore aspects of quantum mechanics that you had overlooked." The display showed the history of human technological development, not the public version the Empire had observed, but the true path they had taken. Where the Haelor had developed ever more powerful conventional drives, humanity had learned to slip between dimensions. Where the Empire had created stronger energy shields, humans had discovered ways to exist partially outside normal spacetime. "Your civilization spent millennia perfecting the manipulation of matter and energy," Patel continued. "We spent generations learning to manipulate reality itself." In orbit above Crystallis Prime, the UES Stormbreaker maintained its position within the quantum defense network. Captain David Chen watched the negotiations through his neural interface, ready to respond if the Empire tried anything desperate. But the Haelor leaders seemed genuinely chastened by their defeat. "The terms of peace are simple," Rodriguez stated. "The era of containment is over. Humanity will take its place among the galactic community as equals. Furthermore, we will serve as advocates for other emerging civilizations. No more species will be artificially held back based on arbitrary technological standards." A ripple of harmonic discord swept through the Haelor assembly. "You would have us abandon practices that have maintained order for millennia," one of their leaders protested. "Order?" Rodriguez's voice carried a sharp edge. "Or stagnation? How many species have you forced to develop along your prescribed path? How many potential innovations have been lost because you couldn't imagine alternatives to your own methods?" The quantum display shifted, showing simulations of different technological development paths. "Every species approaches problems differently," Patel explained. "By forcing everyone to follow your model of development, you've been strangling diversity and innovation across the galaxy." High Admiral Kvex, his crystalline form still bearing stress fractures from the recent battles, spoke up. "And if we refuse these terms, if we choose to maintain our traditional role?" In response, Rodriguez simply gestured to the quantum field generators that humans had installed throughout the Haelor home system. "Your entire civilization now exists within a quantum interference matrix of our design. We could have used it to destroy you. Instead, we're offering partnership. The choice is yours." The implications were clear. The Haelor Empire's military might, their technological advantages, their very way of life, all of it could be undone by humans wielding physics the Empire barely understood. Their choice was between adaptation and extinction. Ixhal rose, his crystalline form catching the light in a way that signified formal decision-making. The Empire accepts humanity's terms. We will end the containment protocol. We will acknowledge humanity as equals. And we will learn from our mistakes. A wise choice. Rodriguez nodded. Perhaps now we can both learn from each other. Your civilization has achieved remarkable things. Imagine what might be possible if we combine our different approaches to understanding the universe. The quantum display showed one final simulation, a future where human quantum manipulation technology merged with Haelor crystalline engineering. The possibilities were staggering, suggesting advances that neither civilization could have achieved alone. As the formal peace accords were drawn up, Captain Chen received a transmission from General Chen back on Earth. Operation Revelation successful, he reported. Humanity's emergence is complete. Not just our emergence, Rodriguez corrected, overhearing through the quantum comm. This is the emergence of a new age for the galaxy, the age of quantum civilization. In the weeks that followed, humanity began sharing some of their quantum technology with the Haelor Empire, while receiving access to the Empire's vast knowledge of conventional physics in return. Other species, long held in check by the containment protocol, were gradually contacted and invited to join the new galactic community. The Haelor Empire had learned its lesson about underestimating seemingly primitive species. Their mistake in attacking the human research vessel had cost them their position of absolute dominance, but it had gained them something potentially more valuable. A future where different paths to advancement were not just permitted, but celebrated. As Dr. Patel later noted in her memoirs, the universe is vast and full of mysteries. No single species, no matter how advanced, can claim to have all the answers. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from those you least expect, especially if you've spent millennia telling them what they can't do.